Hey guys, there's been a lot of talk about civil war in the United States recently, or Civil War 2.0. Um, I want to basically go over a few things with you guys to help you out and help you understand the way that I believe this, if it does play out, the way that I believe this war would play out. I want to impart you with some information that I've gleaned from a lot of military field manuals, uh, uh, most notably the Counterinsurgency Operations Field Manual written by General Petraeus, one of the CIA field manuals, um, some of the Special Operations field manuals, just various military field manuals that I've studied. Basically, what I'm going to talk about in today's video is going to be what I think the Civil War 2.0 would look like. And we're going to cover some topics that you may not be familiar with. So stay tuned for that information. All right, so introduction to how I think it's going to look, how I think this Civil War is going to look. I do believe wholeheartedly that if this war breaks out, that it will be the largest utilization of irregular forces that the world has ever seen. And what do I mean by irregular forces? Irregular forces are military organizations that typically operate with guerrilla tactics. And we're going to go over some of those tactics later on in this video, and I'm going to make subsequent videos on how I think you should react and respond in that situation. Why do I say that this scenario would be the largest utilization of irregular forces that the world has ever seen? Because the United States is extremely divided, and the government itself, not only does our own government use irregular forces and employ irregular forces or deploy irregular forces, but the people who would not, or who would rebel against the government by their very nature, will be irregular. Either the people who, not just the people who rebel against the legitimate government, but also the people who attempt to fight the insurgents who are rebelling against the government. So there will be local militias. There will be regular forces in the war as well, and you will see tanks, you will see all that heavy equipment, but the majority of the fighting will be done by irregular forces. So local groups, small groups who will be forced to use guerrilla tactics. So moving on to discuss what these militias, or AKA guerrilla forces, how do they operate? The number one goal of any insurgency, not just any insurgency, but also a counterinsurgency, the number one goal is to delegitimize the other group in the eyes of the civilian population. So they will attempt to make the other side look bad. And you see this in the clashes between the insurgents and the clashes between the legitimate governments. If the legitimate government kills an innocent civilian in the crossfire, then the insurgency will use that as publicity in order to recruit more insurgents. They will say, look, The government is killing civilians left and right. They're bombing us. Join our cause, join our group. And for that reason, and pretty much that reason alone, that is why the local government will, as best as it can, restrain itself from dropping bombs, so to speak, from dropping nukes, from bringing tanks in and sending artillery into cities and towns. They don't want the bad publicity, because if they get the bad publicity, then the insurgency will grow, and no one knows that better than our own government. And so, because of that truth, the death toll will increase, because they know that an insurgency war by its very nature demands boots on the ground. Not tanks, not drones, not nukes. An insurgency by its very nature is one that demands that you get close to the population, change its mind about the insurgency, and gain their support. And in order to do that, you have to have boots on the ground. This is according to all the insurgency and counterinsurgency field manuals. So this is not just my opinion. I'll go ahead and leave the books that I'm referencing. I'll leave them in the comments. So for that reason, you will see a lot of troops. You'll see a lot of soldiers patrolling. The police, the soldiers, National Guard, they'll be setting up checkpoints. Same with the insurgents. They'll be setting up checkpoints and all that kind of stuff. And so now that you know about that, let's go on to what are some of the tactics of an insurgency. So we'll briefly discuss. I'll try to keep it under 20 minutes. We'll discuss logistics, offensive operations, and defensive operations in this video. And in the next video, we'll go about what are some of the things that you can do to protect yourself, protect your family during a time like this. So let's talk about logistics first. For logistics for an insurgency, normally what they do is they seek out to recruit people for that specific purpose who agree with their cause but may not be as dedicated to the cause as the actual fighters are. So these people, what the service that they provide for the insurgency is normally transporting materials, transporting troops, lodging the troops, and feeding them, basically giving them aid and comfort, which is itself an act of treason against the United States. So essentially what you have for logistics is people who may have something to lose, like they've got families, or they've got a business, or they are a prominent figure in the local area, and so they don't want to get in as much trouble. They've got stuff to lose, and they might not be able to fight as well. They might be people who are handicapped, people who just don't really have the ability to physically fight, and so in order to help the cause, they assist with logistics, moving supplies, transporting troops, giving them lodging and refuge, a place to hide and stuff like that. So that's usually how their logistics is done. Okay, for offensive operations, we'll move on to offensive operations. Offensive operations is normally done by the younger crowd, the upper teens, and in the mid 30s and below. So the young men are typically the ones that are the insurgents, and they by the very nature of the insurgents usually do not have a large force, and because of that, a large numerical force, and because of that, they are required to resort to hit and run tactics, ambushes, planting IEDs, mines, using very nasty traps, booby traps, and getting people in situations where they are vulnerable, and then attacking them when the insurgency has the upper hand. They try not to let their presence be seen by drones. They don't want to be seen by drones. They don't want to be seen by police, by military. So they attempt to operate as one in the shadows. And then when their numbers increase, then they'll start to have their face out there a little bit more. They'll do patrols. They'll actually set up checkpoints. They'll set up defensive positions and stuff like that. But at the onset, when their numbers are small, they typically do assassinations. And one of the main reasons they use assassinations is to instill fear in the local population, and they in order for the local population to get the local population to listen to them and to follow the instructions from the insurgency. Now, normally the insurgencies operate on a local basis, so within cities, counties, and towns. They normally operate in a single region like that, and they get their resources from in that region as well. So it's very hard to cut off their resources unless they are funded, which most of the time they are funded and supported from an outside entity. And a lot of times they'll get assistance from NGOs too, but that's another topic we can talk about later. So offensive, you know about what they do for their offensive tactics. They like to hit and run. They like to ambush people when they're vulnerable, and they like to plant traps, booby traps, and stuff like that. So the next thing we're going to talk about is defensive operations. What are some of the things that they do for their defensive operations? A lot of times what you'll find is that in order for them to hide their activity, they like to set up their bunkers and their defensive positions inside of a house. Because a normal drone without very expensive high-tech equipment cannot look into a house. Helicopter pilot without the expensive equipment cannot look into a house from above. They can't really see what's going on in the house. So in order to see what's inside the house, you have to have boots on the ground, going through the streets, looking through the windows if they're able to look through the windows, to see what's going on in the house. And what they do inside the house is they bunkerize it. So essentially what they take everything out of the house, and they set up sandbags or concrete blocks in the form of a bunker inside the house, and then they use that as a defensive position, so that if they are attacked, they can fight back from that defensive position. And they like to employ snipers because their numbers are small. And so with snipers, it's really, unless you have sophisticated audio triangulation equipment, you're not going to be able to find out exactly where they're from. It's going to be really hard. It's really hard to do that. And so they like to shoot at people from inside buildings, behind a block wall or a sandbag wall, to keep them safe. And a lot of times what they'll do is they'll dig out the foundation of that house, and they will create tunnels from one house to another, so that if they are overrun, they can go through that tunnel and into the other house and escape some way or continue fighting. And so what will happen is the legitimate forces or the let's just say the counterinsurgency forces will raid that house where the sniper was, and they a lot of times, if the insurgency is very sophisticated, they will booby trap that house, and they will booby trap the tunnels, so that when the counterinsurgency forces come into that house to raid the house and to take out the sniper, they will trip a trap, and they will get killed. So it's a very hard war to fight, and for that reason, I'm putting these things out. I'm putting these things out there so that you will be able to see the indicators, so you'll be able to know what to look for, so that you can help the legitimate forces when they come around, so that you can say, hey, I saw these guys going in and out of this house, bringing concrete out of the house, bringing power tools into the house. They brought a jackhammer in there. I heard the jackhammer inside the house, and then they started bringing out dirt. They started bringing out concrete. That's an indicator that they're building a tunnel inside that building. And what is a tunnel for? A tunnel is for protection, escape, and evasion. And so, another thing is, if you see, your neighbors or someone, you notice someone bringing sandbags or cinder blocks inside of a house. Why would somebody bring cinder blocks into a house unless they're building a bunker? You don't normally bring cinder blocks or bricks or sandbags into a house. You keep them outside of the house, right? That's the kind of stuff that goes on the outside. So if you see somebody bringing it on the inside, that's suspicious, and you can alert the authorities for that. So now that you know how I believe the next war is going to be fought, what are some of the ways it's going to be fought, how are the logistics done, how are the offensive operations done, the defensive operations, you have the knowledge now to keep an eye out for that stuff. And another thing I'm going to let you know in this video, because I still have the time, is some of the psychological things that insurgencies do. When they recruit people and they indoctrinate people into their organization, they always have a slogan, they always have a cause, and they always have several different phrases in order to unify the group, to make the group feel unified. They always agree that there is some cause that they are fighting for. So they're seeking justice for something, okay? And in order to unify the group around that cause, they always have a slogan, they always have phrases, and when they're trying to recruit people, they'll put those slogans out, they'll say those phrases to kind of fish for you to see if you agree with that slogan, if you agree with that phrase, then maybe you should join the organization too. If you start hearing people say slogans and phrases, and it becomes a pattern in your life, in the community, then you know that there is most likely an insurgency that has developed. There is an organization, and they are trying to recruit you. Okay, so if you hear that phrase, and it seems like they're trying to basically ask you if you agree with that phrase or that slogan, or if you what is your opinion. They're trying to ask you what your opinion is on this certain injustice or whatever. They always call it an injustice. They want to know what your opinion is. They're trying to get your opinion because they're trying to see if they can recruit you for the fight. If they can recruit you to join the organization. So I think that's pretty much going to be it for the video. Some of the things that you can do. What are some of the things that you can do to prepare yourself for that situation will be in the next video. So I encourage you, if you like this video, go ahead, give it a thumbs up, comment, like, subscribe. Check out my other YouTube videos. I do a lot of stuff. I do a lot of investigative reports on what's going on down here at the border. Some things that, some very controversial topics. Go ahead and check those videos out. Stay tuned for the next video. I'll have some links to other videos up in this corner right here. You can check that out. Check those out. And yeah, stay tuned for my next video. It's gonna tell you essentially what you can do to defend yourself, and to be prepared for a situation like that. And if you want to find out more information, check the description box below. There will be references and sources for you to study regarding this type of warfare and this, how you will essentially be able to, the best thing you can get to prepare yourself for this is knowledge. And that's why I recommend you check out the books in the description box below. These are not politically motivated books or anything like that. They're just matter-of-fact military manuals. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoy this video. Like, comment, subscribe. Stay tuned for the next video. Thanks.